Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences, such as...
I remember at high school when Juice Bigelow first came out. Oh my family was in heart attack mode.
This is Tourette's podcast, part of the Geeks Rising Network. I'm your host, Ben Brown. Should we do away with the name Tourette Syndrome? So I just gave you all a few seconds to think about that, and I'm wondering what came to mind for you. I mean, it's possible that caught you completely off guard. If you haven't seen the dialogue about this lately, you might be asking why. What about renaming Tourette Syndrome? What for? Well, a little while back, a study came out, and I've referenced this before, a study looking at TS. And in the conclusions or recommendations was something about maybe doing away with Tourette Syndrome in name, and instead introducing the replacement terminology, tic spectrum disorders, as a way of potentially better capturing this and other tic disorders, while also recognizing that there's stigma associated with the words Tourette syndrome. So the authors of this report were reasoning that maybe it's time to discontinue it. Stop using the words Tourette syndrome, clear away that stigma, start fresh with new language. Maybe things improve. So a couple episodes ago, I mentioned an editorial response to the suggestion, a response that I was able to contribute to thanks to the coordinating work of Dr. Christine Canalia, she's a Tourette scientist, along with fellow contributors and fellow Touretters, Jaleesa Jenkins and Laura Belliers. Anyway, we responded to this proposal and took issue with it, saying in part that, no, we shouldn't do away with the name, or at least not as proposed, because so many people in the TS community really identify with being a Touretter, and that a lot of the stigma seems to be in the returns on the public expressions, if you will, of Tourette syndrome. You know, what people think of our tics, the things we can't control that might, on first glance, appear to be kind of off-putting to the general public. That display of Tourette syndrome is often what gets the attention and the public commentary. Yes, the name itself gets people in the mode of ridiculing and serving up the parody of TS. I mean, it's what people go to in kind of a colloquial way when they blurt something out and then they'll say something like, whoa, that must have been my Tourette's. I mean, we've all heard that kind of thing. And yes, the name itself is treated like a punchline sometimes or often, but changing the name would be a loss to me. Not just because I'd be under pressure to think of a new podcast name, but because it took me a lot to finally publicly identify as a Touretter and be totally fine discussing it with anyone who learns that I have what's called Tourette syndrome. It's been opening up a door for a conversation. People are intrigued by Tourette syndrome. They know what they know the words Tourette syndrome. And they may not have the clearest idea, or at least the best impression of what it is, but that's allowed me to have those talks. I think discontinuing the name of the diagnosis to something else, which by the way, could be something that makes news. I mean, and if it does, that could just further the problems and really subtract from the experiences that all of us have, or all of us who've connected with this disorder and its name. And for a lot of people, at least like myself, it's been kind of a struggle to get there. Which I guess says that the stigma affected me too as a Touretter. But I ultimately embraced it, and so Laura Belliers, who again assisted in this published response that we got to write to the suggestion that we discontinue the name Tourette syndrome as a standalone diagnosis. So Laura was just in Hanover, Germany, for the European Society for the Study of Tourette Syndrome's conference that was in May. And one of the elements of that conference was this debate about the name. I'm really glad Laura was there. She spoke up about it, and she wrote a post summarizing her public comments at that conference on this topic. If you go to tourettespodcast.com and you see the recent article titled Rename Tourette Syndrome with a question mark at the end, you'll find Laura's recap of it. And she did report that one of the authors of that report, Dr. Kirsten Mueller-Wahl, if I'm pronouncing that the right way, Dr. Mueller-Wahl put this question out there about renaming it for the sake of debate, just to get the conversation going. She wanted to spotlight the name Tourette syndrome to see how appropriate it is in today's context. And I think in concept, that's a really great idea for a lot of things, for a lot of the language we use, day to day. But what Laura pointed out, and I think this is really great, She told the conference folks that, research doesn't support the idea that renaming the disorder would remove the stigma. And I'm just going to quote from Laura here. This is from her recap of what she explained. Stigma changes through reappropriation, not through changing the name. This means identifying with the word Tourette, not pushing it away. In the Netherlands, it's normal to call ourselves Touretters, so this process is already ongoing. This process would be halted by getting rid of the name Tourette, and the stigma would most likely change to the word tics, so that wouldn't be helpful. This means that research suggests that a name change would not solve the problem. End quote. And Laura goes on to point out that there's a lot more to TS than just having tics and, all the comorbid conditions that are so common to it. But back to Laura, quote, "We concluded the debate by acknowledging that we still have a long road and debate to go before we can make a decision. We need to do more talking, thinking, and research. And is getting rid of the word Tourette not stigmatizing in itself?" End quote. And I was skipping around a little bit there with excerpts from Laura's online recap about this, but I'll have the full thing in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com. This is something I'm pretty sure we're going to continue to talk about. Tell me what you think. Would love to know what you think. Tourette syndrome is, that's what I have, and it's what I've had a lifelong conflict with in one way or another. And now I'm totally at peace about it, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the community. I love being called a Touretteer, and I've learned to appreciate so many things that come with it. So I'm Team Tourette. I mean, if ultimately there is a practical, scientific, and social basis for changing the name, or maybe there's an argument that I just haven't considered yet, but if there is a good enough reason, then there's a good enough reason, and I'll be on board with it. I'm not fanatical. But I would like to hear what you guys think about this. It is a good debate to have, but I still think the better battle is in public acceptance and self-acceptance. So it's not so weird to have this disorder that's so socially problematic that we have to think about renaming it. Like I remember my dad telling me that his high school band, like the rock band that he played with in high school, was so problematic that they had to change their name before every gig so people wouldn't think it was the band they saw last time. And if I recall, he laughed and said that didn't exactly work, changing the name. So I should actually learn more about that before talking about it. But for what it's worth, I'm happy to continue watching the improved social acceptance of having TS. Yeah, we got a long road ahead of us, but at least we're moving on it. At least there appears to be a road. So, from what I can tell, thanks to improved media portrayals, and yes, a long way to go there too, but things are improving, I think, and I'd love to see that continue to play out under the banner of the words Tourette Syndrome. So most of you know by now that Tourette's podcast is part of the Geeks Rising podcast network, and I got to point out the uptick in listens since that became a fact. Lots of new listeners, people who do have TS and people who don't. I'd love to welcome everybody here. If you have any questions about TS, or if you have a scenario that you want to ask the community about, whether you have TS or not, it doesn't matter. I'm glad you're listening. And if you got a question, got a comment, send it over to tourettespodcast@gmail.com. Or you can take it to the discussion group on Facebook and let me know if I can use your name with your question or comment, because I love reading them on the air. I have gotten a lot of questions over the past week, but mainly kind of one-on-one personal stuff, so that's nothing appropriate to share out loud here. So I'll just go straight to a couple announcements before we get to the main part of the episode, and y'all are really going to like it. Our guest this week is really warm, just a really warm, positive personality. First announcement, I am honored to be a part of the August 2019 Sunshine Summit Live, which is this really great series of live streams that highlight the work of creators and podcasters. It's organized by Heather Welch. She's the host of the Sunshine and Power Cuts podcast, which is also part of the Geeks Rising Network. And it was very cool of her to ask Tourette's podcast to be part of her summit. So we're going to link up on a live stream and talk. There will be an archived replay after that. But my appearance, I think, is August 12th for me. She's in New Zealand, so I think she's August 13th. We've got kind of a time difference there. But if you want to hear me talk probably in a more general way about my background and about Tourette Syndrome and about the podcast, then please check that out. And I'll share more links and information as we get closer to that date, the evening of August 12th for me, Eastern Standard Time. But I'll share definite info as we get closer to it. And I'm excited that Chris Curran of the Podcast Engineering Show is also going to be part of the summit. And I've been on his show before talking about the technical side of podcasting, if that's something you're interested in. Anyway, Chris is a lot of fun to listen to. He's an amazing host, really amazing laugh. And again, I'll put out more info as we get closer to it. Thanks to Heather with Sunshine and Power Cuts and to Geeks Rising. Okay, the second thing I want to plug also happens in August, and it's another summit. It's one I've mentioned before. You remember me talking about the Treating Tourette Together Summit? That's August 17th and 18th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States. And it's going to bring all kinds of people together, people with TS, people without TS, scientists, healthcare professionals, all these stakeholders that need to be kind of on the same page with one another. And I plan to be there as well. Well, not that I plan, I'm going to be there. And I'm so looking forward to it. treatingtourettetogether.org for more information about it. There's also going to be a heavy focus on therapies like CBIT. Again, the Treating Tourette Together Summit, August 17th and 18th in Minneapolis. And if you're going to be there, I will too. We can meet up, hang out. I think I'm going to have my podcasting gear with me. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Our guest this week. I'm so excited about this one because he's like I said, he's a warm personality. Just really great attitude about this whole TS thing. Jason is from Australia, and he has a really great live stream show that actually a little while back did a review of this podcast. He's a co-host of the live stream called Experience This Too. And they did a review of Tourette's podcast, which I was a little nervous about until I actually got to hear it and learn why they picked this podcast to do a review of. And I'll just save the rest for the conversation. Here it is, me and Jason.
Yeah, okay. My name's Jason. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I live with my beautiful partner and my 3 kids. I'm 37 and a cuddly man with a good sized beard, Ben. That's what I like to say. I've made a bit of a comeback, so I'm pretty happy about that. But that's just me in a little bit of a nutshell. And of course, I'm here because I have TS.
Yeah, so I'll do a little setup. I a while back, just for the listeners, a while back I got a Twitter notification that Tourette's podcast was going to be reviewed on this live stream out of Australia called Experience This, and of which you are one of the hosts. And at first I was like, oh, cool, great. And then I got a little bit nervous because, is this going to be a sincere review, or is this going to be one that kind of picks on the community and makes light of TS? And I finally caught it on a replay, and the live stream, I loved it. I was totally moved. I thought your story was great. It was thoughtful. It was honest. It was really kind. And in the course of listening, I learned, and the audience learned, that you had your personal connection to the topic. Could you kind of pick it up from there?
Yeah, of course.
Your childhood and just sort of, how do you relate to Tourette syndrome?
My childhood with it was really, really difficult. I was diagnosed with TS roughly when I was 4 years old, 4 or 5, just prior to school. School starts here around 5 years old, and I have vague memories of that time. All I can say from those early days is that felt like a lot of pressure on my parents, and the emotion that was going through them. I can't relay what they exactly felt, but I get that this was new. This was something that this was mid-'80s, by the way, 1980s.
Yeah,
that it wasn't known. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't. There was no social networks or social media to have discussions to put things out. So the family just, I think, was in a little bit of shock, state of the unknown. But they banded together in such a way that I think I will be forever grateful for. I will always have the deepest respect and love for my mother and father for really stepping up. You hear of stories of those type of arguments, concerns can really split a family. When a child has a disorder or a syndrome or something not quite right, like you start going through the blame game, where it sits. But whilst I'm sure the conversations they had were quite heavy,
Hmm.
my memory of the early time was then really stepping up as a family community and doing everything they could for myself,
Yeah.
um, and really going above and beyond. And my extended family, every one of them from my memories of childhood, were amazing. My aunts, my grandparents. There was no being isolated. In actual fact, I felt more loved than other kids and other family members.
Wow.
It almost made it special in their eyes. Um, I might have been the oldest grandson as well, which might have something to do with it. But look, we'll um,
Mm.
uh, take a little part in there. But I think from that point, whilst I went through some very dark times going through my childhood, I always had a support network or someone to catch me.
Wow.
Um, so that was pretty amazing. I feel I was definitely one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are important stories of families who really kind of pulled through to, especially if you're a new parent, it's your first child, and by the time they're 5 or 6, they're exhibiting signs that something might be wrong, and just just that alone, just the anxiety that will come with that alone, and then getting the diagnosis of something that you as a parent may have no direct contact or no direct familiarity with, especially at that time, because you and I are roughly the same age. I'm about to turn 39, and so the mid 1980s, yeah. But before we had really quick access to be able to build a community online, no matter I know about you because of a live stream. That's how we connected, and
Yep.
back, and it was simple as that. But back in the day, I mean, yeah, you really needed to have that physical, kind of personal community, which I did not have when I was young. I would go to conferences and that sort of thing, and I would get that experience of seeing other people who had Tourette syndrome, but I didn't have like a day-to-day friend who knew exactly where I was coming from. And I guess, to be fair, I didn't know where my friends were coming from either. But they had their things going on, I guess. But just having something like this that there's so much anxiety around it, especially when it's newly diagnosed and you don't have that past experience, that it's really important, I think, that we kind of salute the parents who helped us through it and got us there and bit through the anxiety to make our lives better. And the diagnosis, I mean, do you recall much from that time period specifically of kind of what your tics were like and kind of how your parents reacted to it before the diagnosis came up? Did they have an idea of what it might be, or was it just brand new information?
No, they didn't have any idea really.
Yeah.
It was a general practitioner that sort of said, "Oh, I've heard about something. Maybe it could just be tics,
Yeah.
just normal motor tics, anxiety-driven tics, but it might be this thing called Tourette's." And I was sent off to a pediatric neurologist
Hmm.
to be looked at. And this specialist, his name Dr. Grattan Smith, out here in at our children's hospital in Sydney,
Hmm.
spent lots and lots of time with me over a number of years. I went through the period, so many different um, remedies, so to speak,
Hmm.
which we'll go into
Yeah.
as we progress. But um, yeah, at the time, it was unknown to them. And it was just a young boy that would constantly cough. And I've gone through pretty much every spectrum of this in different ways.
Hmm.
So I've gone through the motor tics of arm slapping, head clicking, throwing body parts randomly in the air, to the vocal tics with swearing and noises.
Hmm.
Uh, Obsessed with Star Wars, so everything was a laser noise as a child. So things that would take an interest in me for whatever reason, and it's that fine line of just needing to make that noise or needing to make that click, that slap, that sound, the physical movement. Uh, those things, there was periods, and they were constantly changing. I felt. I think earlier years there was a lot more motor, physical tics. I think it progressed into more vocal ones as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it was tiring. Every day was just a very long day, and
Yeah.
I was physically exhausted, but mentally alert. It was hard to explain how I felt, and getting to sleep at the end of the night was just really tough.
Yeah,
Uh,
man. I can relate to you on that. Exactly how you said it. Just being physically exhausted, just being totally spent, but your mind is just wide open. I mean, that's such a such a frustrating feeling.
yeah, it definitely. And I think my parents, again, just that support, tried everything from sitting and early years of lullabies and back pats just to help to soothe. Uh, and they put a lot of time, extra time into that support.
Y-
And
Yeah.
it was yeah, very challenging time. I think it really didn't hit home to me how different I was, though, until I got into primary school.
Hmm.
And that's when it really stood out. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like some other disorders. I should say it is physically in your face as opposed to others that may be more internal or just give you more energy, etc. Whilst
Hmm.
they're just as effective or have a huge effect on those people's lives, this one you could tell I was coming from two streets away.
Right. Yeah.
The noises, the sounds. So classrooms, I at first was tried to be, the schools and the teachers and my family tried to integrate me normally, as all other children were.
Yeah.
And then there was some leniences. So I went through a spitting phase when I was in year three, and the desire to spit was huge. So I had a little tissue box put on my desk with a bin next to it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
the, the accommodation that the teachers went to try
Hmm.
to work with me
Yeah.
through it was amazing too. Teachers were really, really good. It was the kids and the lack of understanding that made life very tough.
Yeah.
It was almost like I was a leper. Don't play with him. Don't talk to him. So you buried your head in, very solo-based games, and you
Yeah.
isolate yourself. And all you really wanted was a sense of belonging, a sense of
Yeah.
attachment with other humans.
Did you find yourself connecting with other adults to that end? I mean, that's something I felt when I was a little kid too. I mean, I had some friends who were my age, uh, and the school I went to, it was a very small class size, and it was the same kids again and again over the years. So we kind of all got used to each other. But for the most part, kids in my neighborhood, a couple friends, but I just felt more connected with adults because of that level of support that you were describing earlier. Like I felt that's where I was safe, and I was much more interested in adult conversations and that kind of thing. I mean, did you have anything like that?
I enjoyed the time spent with the adults. They listened. They didn't. I didn't feel judged.
Yeah.
And kids can be judgmental in the best of times. You're not as fast. You're not as smart. You're not as
Right.
good at that game.
Hmm.
But now it's that kid with all the weird noises and the weird sounds and weird actions.
Yeah.
You pick last for the football team. All those type of things come into play. And yes, spending time with adults was much easier, but I found it even easier just to spend time um, with something that would entertain me. So computer games and technology became, I would just lose myself in it. Television, it was that form of escapism,
Right.
uh, something just to get out of my head, get out of trying to control something that felt uncontrollable. Adults were great and always supportive, but I was still a kid. I
Right.
wanted to do kid things.
Hmm.
I had some good friends though. There was some good friends at good points in time that transcended into high school friends who again, I don't think I would be here today without um, their solidarity and strength standing by me through a difficult time.
Yeah, yeah.
I think for me, the one big takeaway from my time having TS is how important connection to people are,
Hmm.
and how much support from those people can make or break you as a person yourself.
Yeah, I mean, could you kind of paint the contrast? I mean, what do you imagine your life would be like if you didn't have that level of support? And I mean, you're kind of getting run through the ringer, socially with, kids your age who don't understand you. And if you didn't have that parental support and that kind of, that lift, how would your life be?
Oh, look, I don't know if I'd even be here today, Ben. It definitely was some dark periods. If we take a step forward to high school,
Yeah,
uh, it was some really serious bullying.
yeah,
I, you would try to hide into the background of many areas, put yourself in places that no one else would go, but people would start to seek you out, or they would actually, oh, they would just be really nasty and bully
yeah.
and physically nasty too, pushing, um, punching, holding you up against walls. There was some really
Hmm.
tough times, and I started to at that point in time put my future uh, in two paths. One was trying to focus in areas that would be comfortable. So it was spending a lot of time at the ag plot, at the school, and spending time with the animals, because animals don't fight back in that same regard. They just accept you. And also going down that science path. Science in high school for me was a key.
Nice.
Really was. What was I going to do with it? Not sure. I'd like to think it was about finding a cure, but I think it was more that I enjoyed the laws of science, and pushing myself to think that way.
Yeah,
And I enjoyed that. So I spent time in the science labs as well,
nice.
and doing. So that was fun through high school. But as we know, high school is very much about a popular contest, and
Hmm.
being with friends, and testosterone and hormones, and boys want to spend time with girls and girls want to spend time with boys, but you were just treated so differently. You were ostracized. You felt, um, yeah, it was a very, very tough time. So I guess alluding to the fact of where would I be? I don't know if it wasn't for the right people at the right time. Again, coming back to my parents, who I said, look, I believe something along the conversation that I was going to take my life if I didn't change school.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
acted really quickly. They were very swift to make sure that I
Wow.
had the right supports in place, and we changed schools and had a lot of good friends that were built. Parents helped to connect me to the right groups, and I had friends there from playing soccer
Okay.
out of school. So that was positive, and really trying to link us in with the right people. And they were all just so accepting. But I was in a different area at the time, and my parents, those friends were at different schools. It was the right people at the right time in your life that accepted you and wanted to support you. And I felt, okay, I can do this now.
Well, that's
I,
great. That I mean, you were in a really, you know, you were in a bad place, obviously, but you also made a call. That your parents were supportive of. You wanted to try something new. You wanted to. It's kind of a reset button in a way. Go to a new location. You got new friends you can build and all that. I mean, that's a life saving thing when you need it. I guess I wonder about other ways that you've managed your tics at that time, and did you go into medications, or did you have any rituals or
yeah,
anything like that? Or
I had a discussion. We, sorry, pointed out a little bit ago around the Dr. Grant Smith, who was the pediatric neurologist, who spent some time with me doing a number of things. One, I do recall going on medication for a period of time. I can't say how long it was. It was Halidol of some description.
Mm-hmm.
And the zombie-like feeling
Yeah.
of slowing time.
Yeah.
I feel like I could have been, Doctor Strange, and the ability to slow time completely would have described a feeling of how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
Ticks didn't go away; they were just super slow. To this day, if I'm extremely tired, my tics tend to become quite slow. I have very few tics these days, which I should point out that even though as a child I had 7 or 8 tics and vocal tics as well, that at any one time that would constantly change.
Yeah.
There was a severe decrease in high school, late high school, where they just started to just stop until, as an adult, I probably have 4 that I can think of that are still with me, and none of them are vocal. It's all I've got a cough, I've got a facial twitch. There's one I do with my fingers, one I do with an ear popping, and they're all that ones that I've tried to redirect or cover or hide in such a manner. It's not so much just letting them out, but I know when they're coming. I know what they are. There's almost a disguise to them at the same time. So most people think I've got these things, but won't question them either.
Right.
But I get sidetracked. The doctor's stuff. So doing the medication, and I spent a great deal of time with him doing meditation.
Okay.
And that's something I still use today. Meditation was his choice that we went through. Listening to music. Music has always been a big part of my life. And I know that for a lot of people with TS, this is a really important strategy and just important in their lives. They feel fulfilled and connected and a whole range of things. It even goes back to an article I was given, the Sachs article with Whitney Tiki Ray. I'm sure everyone's aware of that. But even in that, he talks about music being an important factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he would often get me to lay down. We'd play some music at the time. I think it was the Beach Boys was the tunes. I don't know why. It's just what we were listening to.
Yeah.
And he would start off with the music playing very softly, and we would go through basically tensing every part of the body and not letting it go, becoming more aware of everything. And you become more aware of your toes, more aware of your legs, and moving right up until you were so tense that you had everything, you knew everything was there, and you would just let it go. And you would release everything. So this form of meditation, I'm not sure what it was, but this was what we were doing. And again, today, it's that mindfulness matter that I still use. That if I'm feeling very stressed, that's when my tics come out the most. I don't have any sense of control or where it is or ways of masking it, but I start to feel it all. That I use that form of meditation to try to bring myself back to a sense of calm. And when I'm in that state of calm, I've got more ways to persuade it to not come out.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting approach, just because the nature of tics, there seems to be some sense of tension and release to them as well. I mean, do you think that specific exercise, I mean, do you think you were kind of hitting at some of the same things, being able to, you were kind of creating the tension and release versus your TS kind of doing it for you? Someone from the science community might be listening to me and being like, "What are you talking about?" but there seems to be a connection there,
This was back in the late 80s and early 90s, so it might be completely debunked and debunked by now what was being done. But
I
at the
just mean
time,
the way I
yeah,
described it.
yeah,
I might have just described it in
it makes
some
sense.
weird way, but yeah, it feels like that kind of.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it was about, again, that mindfulness of what's happening to you at your body and trying to give you that sense of control
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Taking ownership back, perhaps, from it having ownership over you.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it makes sense. I don't know the science behind it. I completely went a different direction once I finished high school with science. So, whilst that was a love in high school, and I started a university career in that, I ended up doing I was invited through my first year. It was like before the second. It was that between semester 1 and 2, that break that you would have to a camp for children. Well, needs at the time, and that was by a previous teacher that said, "Hey, look, no, you've got TS. No, you've got a good understanding of kids. My cousin's running these camps. Would you be interested in volunteering for a week?" Okay, what's it involve? I've got a semester break. He said, basically, you just take a bunch of kids and go out and do a bit of show them that life can be fun. Spend some time with them. You do some activities, bike rides, go to the beach.
Nice.
He said, I think you'd be really good for it because you understand what it's like to be different.
Yeah.
I said, I'll take that. I can do that.
Nice.
I've got nothing to do these holidays. Well, I did that for a week, had the time of my life connecting with these amazing little people.
Yeah.
And pretty much went back to uni the next semester, quit that, and became a youth worker.
Oh, okay.
So my career now is a whole different line of work, and working with kids. The one area when I grew up, I hated kids I hated it for the wrong reason. And I think it's all about understanding, which as an adult, I get now.
Yeah.
And trying to understand them and remind each and every one that you're special in your own way and you have the right to a life that you choose.
And also, I mean, that parental support from your youth and the adults who were there for you, I mean, I'm sure that there's an influence there just in terms of you wanting to, you've been there and you know how these kids feel. And it's the feeling of being different when you're a kid is not the most pleasant thing in the world. And, you know, and you turned this into, that was a turning point for you career-wise.
Oh, very much so. And I think you're right. I still idolize my parents today, and my father is a very significant role model in my life.
Oh, that's awesome.
It comes. They're significant when they say, "I'm disappointed," and that's the worst thing in the world that they could say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, right in the heart.
I know, it's terrible.
But yes, that care is definitely still there, and I'd have no doubt that had an influence in my career choices.
Right.
Later in life. Yeah.
So do you get to interact with other kids who have TS or anything kind of neighboring that?
Strangely enough, not with TS. Most of the children I work with come from a foster care, child protection realm. And it's about safety and and I think in my time, my career, I think I've been doing this for about 15 years now, that I've only come across one child with TS, and it's something I've never pushed upon someone to say, "Hey, look, I've got it. You want to talk?" It's always been, "Here's my number. If they feel like they're alone, they're not. So they can call, but I won't push that on them," because for them the experiences are different now. I think children and young people are becoming they're such resilient little people, and TS has become so mainstream in so many ways that it's more accepted.
Yeah.
I remember high school when Juice Bigelow first came out.
Yeah.
Oh, my family was in heart attack mode. My sister
Yeah.
the most, because she was thinking all her friends are going to see this. How are they going to treat me?
Yeah.
She was so concerned from this, and I was sitting there watching it, laughing my head off. And she looked at me and she had that sense of calm, because
Yeah.
I found it fun. And I look at my own stuff going, look, it's pretty funny sometimes what I was doing. I
Yeah.
was flapping around like a chicken. I can't help but empathize with others watching that going, "Yeah, that was pretty funny." Um, it's about, if that's going to be something you can laugh with, not at.
Right. Yeah.
So having that ownership that we can laugh together about some of those times is important. Bonding over that common enemy, which was TS at the time. Now we just go, oh yeah, look, we can all have some fun with it, and don't let it control us. Don't. It's not. It's just something.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
part of it, but it doesn't control me.
Well, so even if your tics kind of subsided, did you say it was after high school that or during high school where they kind of chilled out a little bit?
Yeah, they started to dissipate through that time, and as an adult, they really decreased significantly. I had heard that this does happen.
Yeah.
Um, um, at the time, as a child, whilst it was said to me, this could just be a childhood thing.
Yeah.
There are known cases for this to decrease, and then you don't think about it. Like, it felt pretty severe. I
Yeah.
think I was considered a moderate case, and I had gone on TSA picnics that we used to have. I'd been on one or two. I think that felt more of a support to my parents to say they weren't alone, and they had some really good conversations with people. But for me, I just wanted to play and feel normal. So
Yeah.
it wasn't an ongoing thing we did. But I saw other kids there as well. So I could see the spectrum, and I still have recollections of pictures of what was happening, and different kids and the type of tics that you saw. But
Yeah.
we were kids. We wanted to play. We didn't want to talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
We were too young. But as an adult, this is wonderful to have a chat with yourself.
I guess one thing we often say or hear in the TS community is that, even if somebody's tics calm down over time, there's still those kind of core, maybe even kind of like less conspicuous elements of TS that carry on with that person. If I guess, for instance, if my tics just all of a sudden stopped and went away, it wouldn't really change Tourette syndrome for me, or the feeling I have of it, because there's a lot more to it than just ticking. I mean, was that true for you? Were those other elements that kind of carried forward and persisted with you even as your tics kind of calmed down over the years? And I'm thinking about, if there are any issues with, we talked about the sleep thing earlier, anxiety, maybe other comorbidities that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there comes a time where you really start to doubt as well, because TS is such a significant part.
Yeah.
Well, for me, of that early childhood and adolescent years, that if someone didn't like me as I grew older, or told me something wrong, was it me or was it my TS?
Right.
Now, I know as a child, that element of other kids picking on you, felt it was very much because I was different. But that anxiety and that self-esteem of, am I good now at what I do because they're just trying to mask that they're trying to help me because of the TS, or if I've done something wrong, oh, is it because I'm different? I don't know if I'm explaining this too well, but
No, I'm
you
following you.
felt as a kid feeling different, and that difference is what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not because of that, but it's because of who you are. But you've grown into who you are because of some of your experiences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and trying to differentiate that, I think I still always so focused on the importance of relationships in my line of work, at home, and being happy. The key to being happy. What is that? I wish we could find that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it external? Is it internal? There's so many self-help books, of which that's great for people. I haven't read one. That's but um, uh, I know they're out there, but I don't know if someone else can tell me that. I've just got to find it myself as well. Importance of relationships and happiness is definitely a factor that I like to see, and being connected with people. I don't like doing solo things. I enjoy doing things with people, team sports,
Yeah.
hanging out with people, to feel connected, to feel supported, to feel loved. Ultimately, don't we all just want to be loved?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think the person who I am today is the residual effect of how I was as a kid, as we all are. But TS definitely had a huge part of that development of who I've become. That maybe overconfident at time, but on the inside I feel really hollow, and maybe that's to defend myself, to be the bigger person, so I don't get trodden on again, or I don't get picked on, or I don't feel different.
Right.
Come out and take control. Don't let others control you, or TS for that matter.
Well, so your family, are your kids of the age yet where you know whether or not there might be any signs, or have you spotted TS in your family elsewhere? Or
No, I haven't spotted it. We spent a lot of time doing the family history, as I think a lot of people would do.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? Is it a mutation of cells? Is it family history? No, we've got no family history of it, and I haven't seen any signs in my kids, which is good. But I hope they feel as loved as I did growing up. So whatever comes their way, they'll know we're here for them, whatever the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say if any signs like that crop up in your children, I, as a distant observer, have no doubts that they're in amazing hands. I mean, just the experience you've had and the support system that you've had that you can carry forward is, and obviously you can do that in a number of different ways that have nothing to do with Tourette syndrome with your family. It's just being able to have something where you need a little extra, just that little bit of extra, sort of parental, just the fact that you had something, people were there for you, and that's something you're never going to forget, that helped to shape you as a person. You had the turning point later on where you're like, I'm going to work with kids, and you know what that feeling of isolation is. You know what that feeling of, these people aren't understanding me. I mean, just the fact that you get that from so many other angles that have nothing to do with Tourette syndrome, I have no doubts that you're an amazing father. I mean, it's just, it feels like a given.
They're kind words, Ben. You doubt yourself in that field, and I'm sure every dad does. You want to do better. You think you do okay. I'm sure I can do much better than I do. I know there's been many a times that I just want to sit and play the PlayStation for a little bit. And you guys go outside. Give me 5 minutes. Just let me be for a while. I need a break. But they get what they need, which is your basic your food, your shelter, and most definitely your love. And they get time, and they take them to their sports, getting up in the mornings, stupid o'clock, getting ready for soccer and their activities, and even sitting through days of dancing recitals, which is the bane of my existence. I love my children, but God, dancing recitals. They're things you do.
Well, so for other parents listening who maybe the parents of, people come to the podcast because they found it, they were Googling their, son or daughter was just diagnosed, and they want to learn more. They want to find community. What's the takeaway, do you think, for parents who are, they've heard of Tourette syndrome, obviously, but may not have that deep familiarity with it like you and I have, and they have some anxiety. They're like, is my kid's future up in the air now? I mean, what does all this mean for my?
No,
I'm scared and I want to
yeah,
know. What's your what do you say to that parent?
as a parent, I'm scared to let my children out the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want anything to happen to them. I'm scared them walking down the stairs in case they trip. If I could wrap them up in bubble wrap and keep them with me forever, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's not realistic. So as a parent, you've got to let children spread their wings. You've got to um, uh, let them be children. And I say this as a parent, but I want to say that first before I allude to TS specifically, because I think sometimes they don't have the opportunity if we try to shelter them too much because they are different. They need to do that. And to be able to spread their wings effectively, they need to feel accepted.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, you need to accept them. Your love for them hasn't gone away. It hasn't changed. If anything, it should make it stronger because they need you to make it stronger. You need to hold them in their dark times and in their good times. You need to be there physically, emotionally. And yes, it will be hard work at times, but that's your job. You're a parent. You're the uh, um, you're the be all and end all to their world as a young child,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be the one that makes or breaks them as a young adult, and change their direction for the good. So accept them. If they're ticking on the couch, sitting next to you and flicking their arm, watching a movie, don't tell them to stop. Don't hold their arm down. Let them slap you on the leg. If the noise from their vocal tics is distracting everyone in the room, well, you know what? Send everyone else in the room out. Let accept them for who they are, because that's going to teach them so much more.
Yeah.
And they're going to grow up to being amazing people because you've opened a world to them that it's okay to be me, and I am going to be strong about it. And if you want to have some fun with it, have some fun with it. Make them laugh with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's not taboo. It's something you can remind us. Laughter is sometimes the best medicine. I think that as a parent, acceptance, smiling and laughter in the house is key, and listening. Listen to your children. None of these children should be seen and not heard, but listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Hear what they have to say about their lives, about how it's affecting them, and what they want. If you can do something that's within your power, fantastic. If it can't, we'll walk the path with them and continue to accept them and be there with them. I think so much is in a parent's hands. And it's a lot of responsibility, but I guess you took that choice when you had the child in the first place. So, that's my advice. Acceptance, listen, and laugh.
And it can grow into a good thing. The result is not, it's not this lifelong struggle necessarily. I mean, once somebody feels empowered and feels accepted and they accept themselves and they understand the talents that they have within themselves, they're there, that's when they're able to do a lot more with the wings they're spreading. And it's, I feel like I'm trying to just reiterate what you said in a less effective way. You've already said it. I don't need to pile on with my assessment of what you just said. That was perfect. That's what leads to a good outcome. Everything you described.
Yeah,
it's powerful.
I think that's it. If we accept them, then they learn to accept themselves, and that can only make them a strong character and better for it. And they'll end up, because they're in a good space, surrounding themselves with good people, and that's what we want for all our kids. I think we get concerned that where our kids' paths can take them, but if you surround yourself with good people, then you're in a good space. Be the good people as family, and continue to see them grow. I hope to think that I've got some great friends as an adult, fantastic, and one of them was on that show that we reviewed TS, Tourette's podcast about.
Yeah.
And I think that all stems from the fact that we're not seeing each other as much and having a cool beverage because we've got kids. He's got two, I've got three,
Yeah.
and who has time to catch up these days? So we said, well, look, we've got to make time. How do we do that? Well, let's review podcasts and streamers and have a beverage while we do that.
I love it.
So, yeah, it's fantastic. And making time for that. And he's a great mate. My partner, she's amazing. She's, for all both our deficits, she's there through the thick and thin. She's such a strong character, such good morals, and just an amazing individual, and so much respect for the things that she does as well. But don't tell her I said that. She'll hold that over me forever and a day.
Yeah, just between us.
Just between us. But these are great people. You just got to continue to surround yourself with good people too.
Well, for anyone who wants to get to know you better, where can we learn more? Can you tell us where the stream is, and just kind of give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, our stream is just experience this too. We're at Twitch. We just review streams and podcasts. We just try to do it from a real positive, light, strength-based approach, just to get streamers and podcasts out there to other communities that might not know exists. It's a hobby. It's nothing major. It's something we do as fun. So thank you for the shout out. Cheers for that. If people want to know or just want someone to talk to about this, I'm sure you've got. I know you've got your closed groups that allow people to chat. I haven't ventured into those, but I'm more than happy to be a link up through your show for some of for the Sydney community. If people have questions or want to know more, by all means, make contact with yourself, Ben, or through the show. And I'm happy to have a chat with people.
Nice. Yeah. Anybody from that area who comes knocking, yeah, I'll connect them with you. That's that's awesome. I really appreciate you saying that and being willing to do that.
Yeah, not a problem. I think it's important. As I've kind of said throughout your show here tonight, that relationships and being connected and feeling accepted is important. So I should preach what I say or do what I say or something like that, shouldn't I? So yeah, look, so much. Like, this is just touching on a whole range of experiences that I've seen. Some of those. Oh, look, I could go on forever, Ben. I could talk about positive moments. The first time you told a girlfriend what you had.
Yeah.
With the girlfriend's parents. Like, what does that mean? Is she going to catch? To times when you're in a workplace and trying to have those professional conversations with people, and you're just making strange coughing noises in the back of the room. Constantly having to turn down a glass of water because I really don't need a glass of water.
Right.
But thank you for the offer.
Yeah.
All those different worldly experiences. I'm sure you've got some good ones, Ben. I'm sure your audience has some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge can to open. I mean, any of these conversations that we've had on the podcast they could be 4-hour episodes. It's like we only kind of scratch the surface, and I feel like after every single episode or every single time I record a conversation with somebody, maybe an hour after the fact, I think of a story that I had totally forgotten about that completely relates to what they were saying. And it's almost like the conversation just kind of continues to grow in my head after it happens. And I find even more connections with it, even more links. And I'm like, oh yeah, there was that one time I did this. It was exactly like this person was describing. And that's maybe my favorite thing about it. Just kind of it just continues to grow. It just kind of has this lasting effect, and it's in a way it's kind of frustrating because it's like there's no way we can just completely adequately, unless I do something where I get with each guest and we talk for a couple hours and we do pre-interviews and then we pull out all the important points like they do on talk shows. And the approach
Yeah.
to this is kind of the opposite. I just want to talk with somebody and have an unscripted, unrehearsed. We just kind of go at it, and no questions are planned out ahead of time. We just kind of see where it takes us, and that's really, really fun and really liberating. And it's I think we end up finding rewards in it that we might not otherwise if we had this sort of stilted, kind of scripted conversation that just exclusively focuses on the huge points of our life. And we think about it ahead of time, and here's the funniest story, here's the scariest story, here's the I just love how we just kind of organically let it unfold, and it's really been a pleasure doing this.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. And I've loved listening to those episodes and see where it takes. I really enjoyed. Look, I found you guys originally through a streamer by the name of Sweet Anita. I saw you guys conversing around something,
Okay,
or
yeah.
her making a reference to it, and I really enjoy how she's taken it to a whole new level.
Oh
And just,
yeah, yeah.
this is who I am, and because we review streamers and podcasts, that's how I found her, and then through her I found you, and just listening to the stories, that unscriptedness, but the, I'm just blown away by the strength of where people are at, even to the episode you had with the young boy,
Yeah,
and talking
Liam.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, and talking about his experience, and see that was just, I wouldn't have had that then at his age. Absolutely amazing, and that to me is a parent that's accepted and giving him every support possible to have control over that.
Man, yeah, she is an awesome mother. I mean, we've talked outside of the show too, and yeah, I mean, I have no, from a parental standpoint, I have no worries about him. I mean, his parents they just get it. They are awesome.
Yeah, you could tell that by the confidence in this young man to be able to talk the way he spoke. Full kudos to them,
Yeah,
and credit to him too. Amazing, amazing.
yeah,
But yeah, listening to the stories go, and the different generations, because it definitely was for an older generation, or us in our, I guess, middle middle age.
yeah.
It was an unknown growing up. There was nothing. I think I was like the second person officially diagnosed at the Children's Hospital
Wow.
ever.
Yeah.
Like that was in our state anyway. So it was really, really unknown. Um, it, yeah, it to now where, oh yeah, that's who it is, and that's what he's got. It's pretty straightforward, and people, I think, have more understanding. And
Yeah.
thanks to shows like yours, it really does allow people to have more understanding from the actual personal point of view, not the talk show that are only going to ask specific questions, or the scientific journal that's going to put you under a microscope. But
Right.
you know, these are real life, real events, and the names have not been changed to hide the identity.
Right. Yeah.
And people can relate and get it.
It's really been the pleasure of my life, and I'm not kidding. I mean, it really has changed my life over the past couple of years, and I mean, just through the simple act of talking in a supportive, community focused way, is, I mean, I don't know. I totally think of everything differently now. Just how I carry myself when I'm out, what I'm nervous about, what I feel like I don't need to be anxious about anymore. It's been a huge self assessment, and it's definitely led me to kind of just purge pointless thoughts from my head, and just knowing that for all of us, that there's a community out there who has our back. It feels a lot more comforting just exploring that. And that was a new thing, but before 2018, I was very much on the outside of things and just living with TS in my own world with, no outreach and no interest in doing it. And then starting this thing, and it just kind of opened itself up to me in a way. It's just reaching out to individuals who were also, I think, similarly kind of out on their own, kind of disconnected, but then, you could tell the eagerness of someone who wants to talk about it. because of that shared experience and how rare that is, and just the gravity of that has been life-changing for me.
Thoroughly enjoyed this, and so many thoughts. I think the biggest concern for me is I'm going to walk away going, I really missed out. I'm talking about this, 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 and this. I do have one question I really want to ask you.
Absolutely.
Because I have come across it, and that is, I think there comes a point in every person's life with TS, and I'm sure with other differences in their own personal life. But for you, what was the moment that you had that TS no longer had control over you, but you had control over it?
I think the moment that happened. So when I was younger, I was really struggling with medications, and I think I was kind of in the mindset that medication was absolutely necessary for me. And I guess to kind of preface, this is not me saying that medication is bad or we need to take a stand against medication. It's what's right for you is right for you. But I think I thought that was the only option for me, is that I had this thing called Tourette Syndrome, and I really needed to get it under control in order to have any sort of, quote unquote, normal life. And so medication is what I had to rely on to get me there. And that's just kind of what I grew up thinking, because I was always on medication, and it was always a different medication, and try a new one, side effects, that didn't work, or that made me feel bad, or it turned me into a zombie, or, and just kind of going through that cycle again and again of like, okay, maybe I'm going to find the right medication one day. And then it was in high school, it was late high school, was the first time where I asked my doctor, what would happen if we just stopped medication? If we just let me breathe and I could kind of go about my life. And I think the answer was kind of, we can try it, we'll monitor you. We can try it, but, are you sure you want to do this? And yeah, let's try it, because I was just sick of not feeling like myself, and, and being a teenager, and the changes that you go, that happen to you at that time. There's a lot of changing, becoming, and kind of questioning yourself, and who am I going to become? What's the adult I'm going to be? And amid all that, that's, I'm like, let me just try it without medication. And when I finally felt like the effects of the medication had left me, I felt okay. And I had still not really self-accepted when it came to just being somebody with Tourette syndrome who can tick openly and who can talk about it openly. I was not there yet. But as far as just dealing with myself and having control over my own life, that felt like the first real adult decision that I made. And the effects of it were good. And I felt better about myself. I felt even though I was still not a confident person in terms of having TS, I did feel more confident. Just the fact that I made a decision that really did have bearing on my life and what my day-to-day was going to be like and how I was going to feel. And so I decided to just kind of, live parallel with Tourette syndrome. And, if it got really, really bad again, I need to medicate myself, then I'll do that. And I did end up doing that a couple times. But the goal, I think, instead of controlling tics with medication, the goal ended up being, how can I just live with myself in the simplest way and still have Tourette syndrome and be okay about it? And that has been a very long process of getting to a place where I can self-accept. And self-acceptance did not, I'm about to turn 39. This didn't happen until I was roughly 36 or 37. But, it's, that felt like, okay, like I can do this. I got it. It's not like my tics are calming down any more than they were, but I think I can do this. And that was just a very empowering feeling with parental support. And again, that was the hugest thing, that I had really great parents who, back in the 1980s, where there's not a ton of resources, you can't go on Google at that time. Exactly. It's where do we turn to get answers besides, having to pay a doctor to tell us what it is, and or having to go to a therapist who might be expensive. What community can we build? And they eventually did build community for me through the Tourette Association, because we would go to conferences, and that was really cool, connecting and just seeing other people who had the same thing I did and seeing how it affected them, and what do they look like, and are they cool? Just questions like that you have in your mind when you're 10 or 11 years old. But getting to that point where I felt strong enough to where I wanted to try it, just me and Tourette Syndrome alone in a room without the medication, felt very empowering and kind of cool to me. And so I think that was kind of a turning point.
And it's such a huge part. It's not about having control of Tourette's.
Right.
It's about having control over Tourette's.
Right. Yeah. And living with it. Yeah.
Identifying that. Yes, that's it. And acknowledging, this is who I am. Oh, God, I would love to have, when I was a kid, put Tourette's in a room and me and see what would come of it. But I don't think I would know a life without having it in a room with me.
Right.
And I don't know if I would be the same person if I didn't have it. I would hope that coming out on this side, it's led me to this path, but I've done more good because of it rather than not.
Thanks for listening. Jason, thanks so much. You really brought a lot to this. Totally admirable. Lucky to have you here. Everybody, let me know your thoughts about this, what we talked about. By the way, I will have a link to experience this too. That's Jason's live stream, so you can see Jason in action. I can't believe this is already the 11th episode of season 3, that is. It's really been flying this season, obviously, because it's been fun. That's all the credit to you guys. And of course, a special thanks to Geeks Rising. So much support. By the way, shout out to Malcolm, Zach, and Logan of the On the Subject podcast. I'm loving listening to that. It's really funny. It gets into the intersection of movies and pop phenomena. For example, the last episode I listened to was about time travel movies. It was hilarious. The episode before that was about Western movies. And they made the comment that Western movies almost require central characters that wouldn't do so well in today's pop culture. I think the quote was, "You can't be woke and be in Western movies." And I think I'll leave you with that. Tourette'sPodcast.com, geeksrising.com, and we're on all the relevant social media platforms. Thanks as always to Sophia for keeping the discussion group going. That's on Facebook. Join up. More than 200 other people already have, and it's growing at a really fast clip. I will see you there in the meantime. Thanks again. Episode 12 ahead. See ya. This is Ben.